As an old player who had his love for this game revitalized, I have been on a journey relearning a bunch of old archetypes and archetypes that ended up getting support and a bunch of new cards and new archetypes that I've never heard about before. And today we're going to be talking about a little bit of an old archetype which has new cards since my departure from this game, and it is going to be the Endymion archetype. It's the Spellcasters. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but regardless, these are the cards that we are going to be learning about today. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I'm your guy with too many YouTube channels. Let's get started with the good old Gemini card from back in the day, the Crusader of Endymion. Again, I apologize, guys. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name correctly, okay? So this card was always kind of garbage back in the day, but I remember every once in a while, you would see it on like some guy using a niche Gemini deck. But anyways, of course, as Geminis are, this is treated as a normal monster, but it gets the effect of the Gemini once you normal summon it again. Once per turn, you can target one face-up card in the field that you can place a spell counter on, place one spell counter on it, and if you do, this card gains 600 attack until the end of the turn. Not exactly a good card, but again, every once in a while you would see this back in the day. Even I remember some people using it like way back then just to have another 1900 attack monster in the field. But as we continue on, we also have a Link monster that I've never heard about. I didn't even know that this archetype ended up getting support until I was preparing for this video. Anyways, this is an 1850 monster. It requires 2 monsters, including a level 4 spellcaster monster. If this card is Link summoned, you can target one, does it say Magistus monster you control, and equip it with one spellcaster monster from your graveyard or banishment as an equip spell. During your main phase, this is a quick effect. You can target one spellcaster monster card in your spell and trap card zone, treat it as an equip spell, return it to the hand. You can only use one Endymion, the Crescent Magistus effect once per turn, and only once that turn. So you basically just recycle something. To be honest with you, I don't really think it's like that great of a monster, but maybe it'll work with some things as we continue on. Okay, we also have, so it's going to turn into not just an Endymion archetype, but it's going to be the Magistus archetype, I guess, of mastery as well. So this is a 4-star, 1300 attack monster. You can target one Magistus monster you control, equip it with one Magistus monster from your extra deck. You can target one face-up spell you control, destroy it, and if you do, draw one card. Then place one card from your hand on the bottom of the deck. You can only use each effect once per turn. Okay. So I see how this is going to work. Is this going to kind of have like I don't know if Crystal Beast is the right way to say it. Just equipping your own cards to your own cards, and then you can like either send them to the graveyard, you can recycle them with the other card that we were talking about. You can get some draw power with this. I kind of understand where this archetype is going, which is very different from like, for example, I remember when this bad boy came out over here and it was all about spell counters, right? Interesting. I don't know if they exactly fit too well together because this was all about the spell counters. You know what my question is for anybody that's involved in the modern game? Are any sort of spell counter decks still viable? Because I remember, like, back in the day, every once in a while you would see, like, a deck build where certain formats it worked. I'm talking, like, all the way back in Teledad, though, like, when that was popping. So, I don't know. I don't think that I've ever seen any, like, hard spell counter decks since then. I've seen cards used throughout the years, like, Breaker the Magical Warrior was popular till, what, like, 2013? So there's cards that required spellcasters, or spell counters, excuse me, but not like an entire archetype like this, because I've always actually really enjoyed the spell counter archetype, or like the spell counter cards, but the thing is, before we were all playing online, well, I personally enjoy playing online. I don't like going to local tournaments or anything like that. I couldn't stand like having the dice on your card and having to do like that manual math with like every single spell counter in the field. It was annoying to me. So now that we have machines automating it, I would have had a lot of more fun playing these decks. But anyways, we also have Endymion the Master Magician. So 2700 attack, 1700 defense. You can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard by removing 6 spell counters from a magical citadel of Endymion you control. If summoned this way, target one spell in your graveyard, add that target to your hand. Once per turn, you can discard one spell to target one card on the field, destroy that target. When this card released, it was a pretty powerful card. When you were running the Magical Citadel card, it wasn't that difficult, and along with just that card, it wasn't that difficult to get a bunch of spell counters, so 6 actually wasn't bad at all, depending on like what you were running in your deck. This is a very nostalgic card in my opinion, or to me. It's nice to look at. It makes me want to play this deck, but it wouldn't even work. We also have a Pendulum monster, okay? Endymion the Mighty Master of Magic. That is a cool looking card. Look at that thing there, man. Alright, so we have the Pendulum effect. It's 2800, 1700. You can remove 6 spell counters from your field, special summon this card to from the Pendulum Zone, then count the number of cards you control that have a spell counter, destroy up to that many cards on the field, and if you do, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of cards destroyed. You can only use each effect once per turn. Alright, so starting off strong there. Then for the monster effect, once per turn when a spell, trap, or effect is activated, this is a quick effect, you can return one card you control with a spell counter to the hand, and if you do, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. Then you can place the same number of spell counters on this card that the returned card had, While this card has a spell counter, your opponent cannot target it with card effects. It can also not be destroyed by opponent's card effects. When this card with the spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add one normal spell from your deck to your hand. Okay, that is a very good card. You get cards back, you get the quick effect, you get to destroy, you have the built-in protection. This card is a very, very, very good pendulum monster for the archetype. Okay, so now that I know that there's pendulum cards and there's even a link monster with this, maybe this did see some play. I've never, but again, I've never kept up because I was about to say, I've never seen it, but I haven't seen half the archetypes in this game, dude. I've been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis lately, me and my counter fairies and my skull servants, and I'm bumping into all these things. I'm like, what the hell is this, dude? There are so many different cards and archetypes to learn about. I am barely scratching the surface over here on this channel. I was thinking about, by the way, I know this channel is in its infancy, but for the few of you who have decided to follow the channel, which I'm grateful for, your time is very valuable. I appreciate you spending it over here. I was thinking about uploading a video about the Skull Servant deck that I'm running right now, because Skull Servants was something that a long time ago I've had a ton of success with. It was one of my favorite decks. I have a ton of fun just getting King of the Skull Servants out there with its 12,000 attack or whatever. It's just something that I enjoy. I've been struggling to make it work in Genesis. Very few matchups I've been making it work. Like the Counter Fairies, I uploaded a Counter Fairy deck if anybody's interested in taking a look at that. That works. The only way that I've been struggling is I've been struggling a little bit going second with that deck, and I'm sorry, I know this is off topic. And I've been struggling kind of figuring out which cards in different archetypes to start negating. Other than that, the deck flows and functions very well. I can't really get the hang of Skull Servant, so I was thinking about uploading what my deck build is, and I don't know if that would make for an interesting video, because typically when people upload their deck profiles, it's like, hey, here's this deck that works, you can copy this deck. But I would be kind of doing the opposite, hey, here's what I'm doing, is there anything that you would suggest I try? Because I know that Skull Servants can work, it got a lot of support. So if that's an interesting video, please let me know, and I'm sorry that I got a little bit off topic with that. Let's continue on over to the next pendulum monster over here. Pendulum effect 1500, 900. Each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on this card. When that spell resolves, you can remove 3 spell counters from this card. Special summon both this card from your pendulum zone and one face-up monster from your extra deck that you can place a spell counter on, and if you do, place one spell counter on each. Dude, that's already a great card in itself. You can only special summon Magisters of Endymion once per turn. When this card declares an attack, you can place one spell counter on it. Once per opponent's turn, this is a quick effect, you can remove 3 spell counters from your field, special summon one monster from your deck that you can place a spell counter on. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your pendulum zone, then place the same number of spell counters that it had as a monster. Wow. This card is phenomenal. Would I go as far to say this is the best one that we've taken a look at yet? If not, it is up there, dude. Now that I'm looking at these couple pendulum cards, I feel like this deck actually probably did see some play. This is a very, very interesting build, but here we go. I'm talking about the pendulum cards over here. Now I'm playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis, and I still play a little bit of Edison format. I'd love to still play Hat format, but that's difficult to find online. Or for what I play, I like to play on the Dueling Nexus browser. You can't use the pendulum cards. I've warmed up to pendulums a little bit as time's gone on, but the links I still do not like at all, okay? We also have Reflection of Endymion. It's pendulum effect. Each time a spell card is activated, place one spell counter on this card when that spell resolves. You can remove 3 spell counters from this card, special summon both this card from your pendulum zone and one monster from your hand that you can place a spell counter on, and if you do, place one spell counter on each. You can only special summon Reflections of Endymion once per turn. If this card is special summon, you can target one card your opponent controls and one card you control with a spell counter, except this card. Return that opponent's card and your card to the hand, then place the same number of spell counters on this card that your returned card had. When this card with a spell counter is destroyed by battle, you can add one Endymion card from your deck to your hand. Another banger of a card, to be honest with you. The attack is a little low, but dude, also the artwork is very, very cool on that one. It looks like it's somehow it's capturing an ultimate rare vibe for it. I like the pendulum effect. I like the monster effect. What I like about these cards is a lot of times that I'm noticing that with these newer cards, you're not exactly losing your spell counters. It's like, okay, transfer these spell counters over to this card. That's probably majorly helpful, because then you don't have to wait for the spell cards to be activated. We also have, beautiful looking, beautiful piece of artwork there, dude. I cannot wait to talk about this in a card art commentary video. All right, Spellcaster, shocker, 1500 attack, 200 defense. If this card is normal or special summon, place one spell counter on it. You can remove one spell counter from this card and discard one spellcaster monster. Set one continuous spell directly from your deck. But for the rest of the turn, you cannot activate it or activate cards or the effects of cards with this name. You can only use each of this effect once per turn. Okay. It's probably good. I don't know if we're going to take a look at any continuous spells. I would imagine so. I can't recall any old cards off the top of my head that were continuous spells, but hey, I'm sure there's a bunch out there. Maybe like something with the new Dark Magician cards. I know those are pretty good, but I know very little about it. So maybe there's some spellcaster continuous spells that we could use from there. Let's continue on over to the next pendulum monster over here, Servant of Endymion, okay? Each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card. When that spell resolves, you can remove 3 spell counters from this card, special summon both this card from your pendulum zone and 1 monster from your deck with 1,000 or more attack that you can place a spell counter on, and if you do, place 1 spell counter on each. For the monster effect, you can only special summon Servants of Endymion once per turn. If this card with a spell counter, or this card with a spell counter can attack directly. Once per opponent's turn, this is a quick effect. You can discard 1 card, place 1 spell counter on each card you control that you can place a spell counter on. If this card in the monster zone is destroyed, you can place this card in your pendulum zone, then place the same number of spell counters on it that it had as a monster. Again, pretty good card in my opinion. Now, I wish that I could expand upon that, but I like the flat out effects that it has, okay? Alright, so we do have a continuous spell over here, Endymion's Lab. This is, I just said, a continuous spell. This card's name becomes... Oh, whoa, okay. So we have another card that acts as a magical citadel of Endymion while it's in a spell and trap zone. Each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card when that spell resolves. Once per turn after damage calculation, if your spellcaster monster is destroyed by battle, you can remove 6 spell counters from your field, special summon 1 level 7 or higher spellcaster from your hand or deck. I see. And if I'm not mistaken, the vast majority of cards that we've taken a look at when it comes to the monsters, they are level 7 or below spellcasters. Okay. That is majorly helpful, and it works with the original, like, Endymion boss monster that we have. But we also have Magia Magic, Thunder of Judgment. This card is always treated as a Magistus and Endymion card, okay? Send one other face-up Magistus card you control to the graveyard, or remove 2 spell counters from the field, then activate one of these effects, but you can only use each effect once per turn. Special summon 1 spellcaster monster from your hand, face-up, extra deck, or graveyard, alright. Banish 1 other card on the field. Dude, that card's phenomenal. You can use both effects are really good. Hey, maybe you need to banish a card. That's always great. That's always a great effect, and you're always going to have 2 spell counters to use. That's like nothing of a cost. But even if getting a monster from your hand or your extra deck or graveyard, you can basically pick anything that you want. That's a phenomenal spell card for the archetype. But now we have the original big nostalgia card over here, Magical Citadel of Endymion. Okay? Each time a spell card is activated, place 1 spell counter on this card when that spell resolves. If a card with a spell counter or counters is destroyed, place its spell counters on this card. Once per turn, if you would activate a card effect by removing a spell counters from a card you control, you can remove that many spell counters from this card instead. If this card would be destroyed, you can remove 1 spell counter from this card again. I remember, like, it's probably not too bad right now, but I remember when somebody with this deck or spellcaster deck had this card going, it was impossible to get rid of. And that's coming from, like, we all used MST, we all used multiple copies of Dust Tornado. There were just too many spell counters going around that, like, when this card got played, nothing could be done about it. So, yeah, this deck type is very nostalgic to me in a way. We also have another Link monster over here. We have Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians, okay? 2 monsters, including a spellcaster monster. If this card is Link summoned, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of spell counters on the field and the graveyards. Alright. So you just get that many, which could be a lot. While an Endymion card or cards is on the field, your opponent monsters cannot target this card for attacks, Once per turn, during the main phase as a quick effect, you remove 3 spell counters from your field, special summon 1 spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to your zone that this card points to. Wow. Busted. Busted. That's an incredible card. You just basically get anything for free. And you could have an infinite number of spell counters depending on when you get it out in the game. I feel like this is an old card. I recognize this one. Either that I'm remembering some spell card. I don't know if it's this one, okay? Anyways, add 1 Endymion card from your deck to your hand. Then you can count the number of Spell Power Mastery and Spell Power Grasp. Spell Power Grasp, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's the card I'm thinking of. But I don't remember what it does. I just remember it being good. Anyways, you control and or have in your graveyard. And place that many spell counters among card or cards you control that you can place a spell counter on. You can only activate 1 Spell Power Mastery once per turn. I don't know. You can count the number of spell mastery and spell counter grasps you control or have in your graveyard. Place that many spell counters among cards you control. I think the other cards in the deck are a little bit better than this. This might be a little bit outdated, but you know what? I could be wrong. I've been wrong about cards that we've taken a look at before. We also have And our Temis card looks very similar to the last Link monster that we just took a look at. But anyways, if another Magistus monster or monsters is normal or special summon while you control this monster, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters, equip it to this card you control to it. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can add one Magistus monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. You can only special summon one Artemis once per turn. Okay. It's not bad. I like the other Link monster a lot better, but hey, I mean, it has its play, and I'm sure that with the Link monsters, there's stuff that I'm missing. Oldie but goldie over here in Tempest Magician, 2200. They got the limited edition on here. Wow. So, one tuner, one or more non-tuner spellcaster type monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, place one spell counter on it. Once per turn, you can discard any number of cards to place one spell counter on a monster or monsters you control for each card discarded. You can remove all spell counters in the field to inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each removed spell counter. This was a very satisfying card to watch people go for game with. It had its place, like, dude, and I don't imagine that this is a common thing, I still run Gaga Cowboy in my deck just in case I can get that card for a game. Majorly satisfying. I remember people using Tempest Magician for the same thing back in the day, but it's an okay card now. We also have a Witchcrafter card. I don't know if this, maybe this will go with the archetype. I don't know. All right. During the main phase, this is a quick effect. You can tribute this card and discard one spell. Special summon one Witchcrafter monster from your deck, except Witchcrafter Jenny. You can banish this card and add one Witchcrafter spell from your graveyard. This effect becomes that spell's effect when the card is activated. You can only use each effect once per turn. This doesn't really feel like it fits that well, does it? Maybe it's just a spellcaster. Hey, it's on the Yu-Gi-Oh fandom, so it must be, I guess, part of the archetype somehow. I don't know. Let's continue on over to Mythical Institution. Is this continuous spell another one of those, like, searchable cards? So there was one card that we took a look at, the name's already escaping me, where you can just set it. Each time a Mythical Beast Pendulum monster card or cards you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, place 2 spell counters on this card. Once per turn, you can remove any number of spell counters from your field, add one monster from your hand or deck, or face up extra deck with a level equal to the number removed that you can place a spell counter on. If this card in the field is destroyed a card effect, you can just remove one spell counter from this card instead. So it depends on whether or not this mixes in, which I would imagine so, the Mythical Beast monsters. I have no idea what those are, and unfortunately, I don't have them to take a look at right now. If the Mythical Beast monsters are good, then this is a good card. Otherwise, this is a little bit useless in the deck over here. Let's continue on. There he is. Spell Power Grasp. There it is. Very, very old but good card. Target one face-up card on the field that you can place a spell counter on. Place one spell counter on that target. Then you can add one Spell Power Grasp from your deck to your hand. You can only activate one once per turn. Dude, I can't believe, like, I wouldn't even bother running this card nowadays. Unless you're, like, really running a 40 deck card. That's so funny. This card used to be good, man. You know what I really enjoyed about this one is the fact that there's a bunch of new cards to take a look at, but still I get that nostalgic feeling from looking at some of these older cards, which I kind of ended up forgetting the effects of. But if you want to help us learn about another archetype, why don't you check out this video on screen right here. I'd love to have you over there. Thank you so much for being here and watching, guys. Take care, everybody.